good afternoon, and welcome to Waterhouse Vibes. Another Sunday, and man, it's terrible. If you're on the East Coast, I'm in sympathy with you because there's a heat wave going down the East Coast and making life very miserable. And I hope wherever you are, you're staying hydrated. Today, or this morning, I should say, I'm not sure, but I know this morning I wake up to the very unfortunate news that United States carried out attack in Iran. Now, this action by the United States, and I should also include Israel into the debate, is going to have an enormous effect on small island states like Jamaica because the price of oil going to increase. And you know what that means for countries like Jamaica. While that is true, we also have our challenge in Jamaica. And I want to share with you a video. But before I do, let me first apologize for the absence of Jonathan and the others. With me today is Brother Herb Nelson, Patrick McCarthy, and myself, Nita, the host. Today we're going to look at a topic. And this is very pertinent because we're going into an election campaign in Jamaica. And there are a number of questions that the Jamaican people will have to answer. So let me play this video. Play this video so that you can get an idea as to what I'm talking about. Trying to get this video up. Here it is.
Police statistics have confirmed that 11 persons were shot, 5 fatally, during attacks by gunmen in Kingston and St. James last night. In Kingston, 2 vendors were killed at Coronation Market. They've been identified as 34-year-old Dane McDonald of Fitzgerald Avenue, Kingston 13, and a 54-year-old Sonia Bennett of Christopher Road, Kingston 14. A man was shot and injured. Persons reported hearing explosions shortly before 10 o'clock and contacted the Darling Street Police. The injured persons were taken to hospital where Mr. Bennett and Mr. McDonald were pronounced dead. Meanwhile, gunmen struck on Metcalf Street in Denhamtown, Kingston last night, leaving an auto body repairman Rupert Grant dead and another man injured. About 8:50, the men were standing along the road when a white Nissan AD wagon drove up. Now the occupant of the car came out and opened fire, hitting them. They were taken to hospital where Mr. Grant was pronounced dead. The other man was admitted in stable condition.
See this property on Craigslist for $4,300 a month?
Yes. The problem, yes. The problem of gun violence in Jamaica continues to be a major concern. And I'm not sure how many of you are following the story about the large amount of guns that was found at the wharf. Over 120 firearms, ammunition, which resulted in Mark Wignall in an article on June 15. Mark Wignall asks, who is organizing the war? Now, as we get closer to the election, these questions will become more dominant because I don't know if you listen to the GLP spokesmen and the members and what have you, but I heard Desmond McKenzie said he's not going to give over the country to the PMP. I don't know what it means, but coming from Desmond Mackenzie, one should be really careful because Desmond is an old school politician. You know, an old school politician who believe in the whole brute force and what have you. And for me, I have to ask myself the question because it's a long time now we've been fussing and fighting. Why are we fussing and fighting? Some would say it's because of economics. Some would say the politician. Some would say it's power. But there's more to it. I really believe there's more to it than just the politician or what have you. You know, certainly one can point to power as a motivating force. People want power, they want to control Jamaica, and they want to run Jamaican life a certain way. The Jamaican people, from the reports, they are waking up to the reality because currently, if the election called now in Jamaica, the PMP would come to power. It is said that the PMP is leading the Jamaica Labour Party by between 4 and 9 points. That's what we face. A likely PMP government and a likely opposition that believe in brute force and threaten and go back to the whole Edward Siaga way of politicking. So, brothers, are you following the news? What about the news that really attract you or concern you this week? You want to share with me? Share with the audience?
Well, yeah, the startling thing with the news is that the elections are near, and the more both sides speak up and criticize each other, very little is being done to stabilize communities and give the people in the various communities of Jamaica hope. There's just so much frustration here in the diaspora, right? We're left out of decision making, despite the fact that we have a $3.5 billion stake in Jamaica, right? Nothing is being said about voting rights abroad. No accountability for the investments that has been lost with SSL and other and NCB. And we need more transparency in public governance, and it's not happening. And every time somebody on the other side speaks out, here comes the lawsuits to shut them up. So we got to get past all of that. We have to have a new openness that people can act. The diaspora can act. I mean, we are the best people to, how can I put it, referee the situation that's going on down there.
But how can you referee when you're not there?
Well,
You do because
we've tried that before with lawsuits.
the common refrain, you know, is that you guys overseas, you can say all what you want to say, but the reality in Jamaica is different. What can we do to influence them? Because just listening to Desmond Mackenzie, it sounds like they are getting ready for a war.
Well,
That's what it sounds like.
unfortunately, the only way that's going to happen is if these weapons that are being shipped to Jamaica, they all get through, and both sides are armed to the teeth. And instead of having an election, they're going to have one big shootout. And when the smoke clears, whoever is left standing is in charge. I don't think that is progressive. I don't believe Jamaica can survive that type of violence. Look at Haiti. Look at how Haiti has gone to the dogs. The gangs are in charge. And now they're bringing the people from Blackwater, right, or Zia, what they call themselves, right? They have to be using advanced technology to track and trace people, hunt them down and kill them.
which Jamaica is using.
Which Jamaica is using, right? And so technology is not going to help you to that extent either. We see that happening in Israel right now. The Israelis are the ones that introduce
Pegasus.
technology for track and trace, Pegasus and all these other technologies to the world. But how the hell did it help them with Iran? It hasn't helped them with Iran. Iran is blasting the capital and the biggest uh, market city for Haifa in Israel all to hell. And it's not helping them. It hasn't helped them. So Jamaica should look at that and say, wait a minute, we're going in the wrong direction. And we need to correct ourselves. Let's look back at some of the things that we've discussed in the past, where we can recommit ourselves to community development. And in doing so, we don't have to spend half our budget on security. Because no matter how much we spend on security, it's not happening. So the people have to make that decision that they want to change, that they're going to change, and that we can begin to grow our country again. Jamaicans just want to be able to go home, relax, enjoy the country, and allow their family members that they support with the $3.5 billion in remittances, that those people can also be successful and be able to enjoy Jamaica.
But Herb, I hear what you're saying, but we still have the problem, the guns in the streets. Last night, 11 got shot, 5 died. Okay,
Yep.
we still have that problem. And it's years now we're dealing with this problem. And on top of that, we have politicians who rather than sort of change their ways, they're going back to them whole way of doing stuff, you know. I surrender the country to PMP and I do this and what have you. So when that line of reasoning take hold in the community amongst the youngsters, what sort of reaction you gonna get? You know, I don't think it's fair to say the Jamaican people should do this. I think the time come now where we need to start identify them politicians, yeah, isolate them, and bring in, while we isolate them, we are bringing in a mechanism, a sort of governance that relies heavily on accountability. That's my take. What say you, Patrick?
Oh, I have a lot to say. I have a
Start.
lot to All right. First of all, you know, just looking at the topic that we're dealing with, why do we fuss and fight constantly? We do that because we have been doing it for so long that it has become pretty much like second nature to do that. Right? There's no progress to be made when you can't work together. That's the only way progress can be made. Right? Otherwise, you're destined for anarchy, because what you described earlier on, Urban, and even where you allude to Michael in terms of the war and so on, it's not war, it's anarchy. Right? War is something that is organized. Right? And as far as we can determine, there's no level of organization, right, present, even with all the weapons on the streets, even with everything that has been happening in the government.
But
things are very much in disarray.
But don't forget, in the 1980s, the GLP under Eddie Siaga, they organized a lot of stuff. So it's possible that some of these things could be organized.
Yeah, but what I'm saying really is that when I say not organized, I don't mean that they don't make efforts to organize it. Of course, they make efforts to organize it, right? They're always gonna make efforts to organize it, right? But when you really look back at all that has been happening, we look at what's happening now and see that it's nothing new. It's a continuation of the whole stuff. It's that crazy cycle that you find yourself in, right? Ever so often, the violence emerges in politics, right? Ever so often, there's the beastly attitude towards each other, right? And in fact, it has gotten to the stage now where it seems more prominent now. We disregard statistics now, right? We don't concern about statistics anymore because it seems like it's happening worse than it used to happen. That may or may not be so. But the fact is that it continues to happen. It makes absolutely no sense, right? We have not evolved, right? We have not evolved for any betterment. And that's the problem. And it's not something that's unique to Jamaica. It's the same thing here in the US, right? It's the same thing across the Middle East. It's the same thing. Right?
Chaos and
yes,
anarchy.
We cannot really expect better to come without consciously working towards that. And that is something we often forget, that there's a consciousness that has to be present for good to happen.
We
don't have that.
Patrick, the police would say that they are conscious.
Conscious about what?
Well,
conscious about what?
Certainly in terms of the crime management, they are serious and conscious about that. I'm looking at some figures here. And it said to me, from January to April 2025, there has been a 152 to 63% increase in fatal police shooting compared to the same period in 2024, rising from around 40 to 50 deaths to approximately 111 to 111 plus. So you have force all to that side of argument. But the end result is a lot of the youths might get killed.
Yeah, but to the crux of the matter,
yeah,
how is it organized? Is it organized in a way that is, reflects any betterment or any pathway to a betterment?
No.
Exactly. And that's my point. That's my point. We can't say just about anything we want to say. It's easy to say anything. It's easy to make an argument. It's easy to disagree, right? It's easy to just simply fight with each other rather than work together, right? There's no respect for life, first to begin with. There's no respect for life. There's no respect for our children. There's no respect for family. Right? And certainly, there's absolutely no respect for government.
And you think the diaspora can change that in Jamaica? Bring about change in Jamaica?
Well, it's not a job that can be accomplished through saviors. This is where it comes back to Herb's point in terms of the people, right? It starts with the individual. Everybody has to start looking in the mirror at themselves, right? This is really where we have to start it, right? That we have to look at ourselves in terms of not being saviors, because none of us can be saviors. What can the diaspora offer? We have nothing to offer, right, to counter what's going on, right? But what is allowable is that if we come together, if we learn to come together, we can work through it.
With the police
This is
killing
where
off
the
the youth,
difficulty is.
how are we going to work through it with the police killing off the youth then? Because at some point, we have to identify the police behavior as contributing to the violence in our country.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So what you're speaking to directly is that we have to start out by being honest. And the first person to be honest with is with yourself, right? Is the police doing meaningful work? No. Call a spade a spade. Right? The police can't serve, and at the same time, while they're serving, they're killing people. The number one disrespect for life comes through the police. Because they're the one wielding the weapons. Weapons of death. Right? What does that mean to the ordinary youngster in Jamaica? It's something I was thinking about just this morning. If I'm driving at night, let's say I'm driving at night, right, through an unknown area, right? I get lost or whatever the circumstances, and I decide to say, damn, I'm in a real dangerous position, right? What can I do? Certainly, one of the thoughts that I'm not gonna welcome is to stop and ask the police for any kind of direction. I would never do that, because I don't expect anything good to come from it. It's the same situation in Jamaica, right? No youth in Jamaica can imagine themselves working with the police in a genuine way to bring about a better relationship and to solve problems in a community. And that's something that goes back to our time in the community work. It was the same thing.
But truly, Patrick, can we bring about this type of reform and change without fundamental change in the constabulary force?
Well, that's what I'm saying to you. That's what I'm saying to you. Everybody. It means that every group, it means that the police itself, the police high command, and all of that, will have to do their own evaluation. Right? They will have to do their own evaluation, right, for change.
And based
they
on
will
the
have to be honest with themselves.
Based on history, it doesn't seem like they are competent to do that.
I don't think so either. Not under the present circumstances. Not under the present circumstances. Because they have never been called. They have never been called to do that. They have never been pressured to do that. Right? And nothing has ever happened. There's never been any withholding of funds from the police and all of that. It's taxpayer funds that sustain them. Right? The police cannot be allowed to run roughshod over everything. And it's not just the police.
Well,
it's not
certainly.
just the police. The same thing applies to the government.
Same thing. Well, the same principle doesn't seem to apply to ALANDO Gray case. Because there's a gentleman, they just put out his photograph, social media, that he's wanted, and to get an apology from them, it's like pulling tooth. You know, I heard Emily Shields interviewing one of the leaders in the police force, and it was so difficult for that man to say, well, we apologize for the mishap.
Well, there you go. There you go. Right?
He refused.
An apology means nothing. An apology really means nothing in the big scheme of things. Right? No, it doesn't. I don't want you telling me that you're sorry. I want you to demonstrate to me that you change. Are you changing? You're in the process of changing. right? That is what you need to demonstrate to me, right? How are you going to bring about this change? How are you going to be honest with yourself and be honest to me?
Hey, you hit the nail on the head there, Pat, right? We talk about something in the past, and that was how do you freeze remittances? How do you get the people in the diaspora to say, hey, you got to clean that stuff up? We got to hold back on remittances till you give us a positive sign that your intention is not violence, is not support to gangs, because we can't keep going down that road because we see what happened in Haiti. Even a country as rich with oil and gas like Guyana, they're having the same issues. Police gunning down people in Guyana. They're gunning down people in Trinidad who have all oil money, right? You can't keep gunning down your youngsters because they're rebelling against what you're doing. They understand corruption better than us, even as adults. Why? Because they feel the impact of the corruption at home. And so they are fighting for jobs. They're fighting to make some kind of progress. Not everybody in Jamaica going to go to University of the West Indies or UTEC or NCU. Why? Because if everybody is qualified to get into the university based on their test scores and their accomplishment in high school, not everybody can get in. So even with the system we have in Jamaica of education, people are going to be exempted from getting to higher levels of education.
I'm glad you mentioned that point. I'm glad you mentioned that point, Herb. Because here's the thing. Education is no different. Education is no different. My biggest issue with education is that the education don't come with integrity. It don't come with honesty.
Can you explain that some more? Explain that some more.
Let me explain that some more. Let me break that down some more. Right? Education is something that comes at enormous cost because they make it seem as if education is something that they give to you, right? Education is something you gotta earn from them. And that's not what education is. That's not what education is. Education is a process of learning for development, right? That is something every living person must be entitled to. There should be no restraint when it comes to that because anything to happen going forward in the way of progress requires education as a basic. It requires education as a basic. Whatever field, whatever area, whatever circumstance, it requires education. Not merely an attempt, right? But it requires consistent and proper education. And when I say proper education, that's what I was talking about when I talk about the honesty of it, right? That's what I'm talking about, the integrity of it, right? Education can be a money-making situation or a situation which deprives you, right, of access to the necessary material and you know things that are required, right? So education is no different, right? The same thing applies. It has to come from integrity. It has to come from honesty.
Can you speak to this question from Dawn? Patrick?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you respond to her? Herb?
Of course. Yeah. It's the same thing I'm saying. She's saying the same thing, right? If they reflect a situation where everybody in the JLP looking out for themselves, for fatten them own calf, right? To satisfy their own interests, right? Where's the interest for the people?
But
Is
I
that
think
why
you
they were
should,
elected?
I think
Mikey, I am encouraged that the people here in the diaspora and to even members of our panel to some extent are praising Marky G or Mr. Golden, as some would say, and saying that he's saying the right things. Now, I believe in redemption. I believe if there were things that were done wrong in the past and that the PNP has paid a price for it over an 8-year period, that they should be given the opportunity to change the direction of things and what this government is doing, because this government has enriched themselves to unbelievable levels.
the government or individuals within the party. The government.
You have to blame the government because individuals in the party make up the government. And if you don't stop the leadership and other individuals from enriching themselves at the expense of the people of Jamaica, if you don't stop them, then you're
Right.
part of the problem.
You can't be a silent voice.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. They break promises year in, year out, and you argue whether the orange or the green that you wear. You don't see what happened. PNP dismissed some bad apples, and they're gone. They wear the green. In the green, they dismiss bad apples, and they're gone. They wear the orange. Why? Because they have insider information on each other. That's not helping. If
But
you have
isn't
a
that
standard,
but isn't that a feature of liberal democracy? You
no.
know, you can shift alliance from one political party to the next without there's any consequence.
But if
Listen, you're opening up now to an even broader subject right there when you say that, when you ask that question, right? Because that question amounts the same to: are we not independent? Are it can be looked at, even here in the US as, hold on, what about, the fact that slavery has been abolished, right? And I would dare say slavery has not been abolished. It has never been abolished. It has been said to be abolished, but it has never been abolished. Slavery is as present today as it has ever been, right? What happened is that slavery has evolved in a way that it doesn't happen in quite the same way it happened in the past, but it still happens, right? It's like you're baking bread, and you say, well, okay, you have a more developed way of breaking bread now, where you can bake bread commercially and all of that. But it don't mean that it's any different from baking bread in the Stone Age. It's still the same baking, right? It's still making the same thing. So the fact of the matter is that when you're talking about liberal democracy, right, they throw up these phrases and all of that, right, in an effort to deceive, right?
Deceive.
Yes. It is not, again, it is not out of any honesty that they speak of liberal democracy. Because what does liberal democracy mean? What does it really mean?
Right to vote, freedom of speech, all of that.
But it's more than voting. You're voting in people who are going to turn around and rule you. Not people who are going to go into office and serve your interests. That's the big difference.
But weren't we told to put our trust in the leaders?
We're told a whole lot of things, Mike. We are told a whole lot of things. But it all means nothing if it's not coming from a demonstrated integrity. Right? How many times we have talked about corrupt politicians? Just as much as we have talked about liberal democracy.
Not all of them. You
No,
see,
no, no.
my,
I'm not.
my,
Listen. I'm not doing a count right now. I'm not
Okay.
dealing with the statistics of anything. I'm talking about the extent to which it happens, right, and the extent to which it impacts people, livelihood, right?
Yeah.
You don't find politicians passing laws that restrain them or distract them from doing the corrupt things that they do.
But why should they
So
when
when they're brought to account, is like climbing a mountain, right?
but why should they when the voters give over our power to them, to the politician?
Exactly. That's a fair question. Because it comes again from the fact that we as ordinary citizens do far from enough in terms of really lifting our level of understanding, our consciousness, our degree of understanding, right? And being part of the process. Because you have to be part of the process. How can I live in a country and don't participate in the process that determines my life? It makes no sense. Right? So at all times, I'm supposed to be looking out for my own interests in terms of understanding, right, what it takes to live a better life in this country. And I can't be selfish about it. I can't be looking at it in terms of only how it applies to me personally, but how it applies to everyone. That's the fundamental right. That's the fundamental right. We have to work together.
Considering, Mike, what you just highlighted about generation,
Continue talking.
right? And think about this, Patrick. The private sector organization in Jamaica represent who? The upper middle class and the upper class. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you look at the masses of people, they expect that their politicians gonna represent them. But those people have the rug pulled out from under their feet because they sing and they chant and they dance and they wear the colors. And in the end, there's nobody there to support them. There's nobody there giving them guidance, funding their programs that they want, not even improving I remember when we had a program about 3 years or longer, Mike, when you had Mr. Hilton on,
Yeah.
and we got on his case about what improvements has Waterhouse seen since he's been there. And we spoke about the broken areas that we can drive past each time we go back home. And it's still there. Are you satisfied, and are you, Patrick, as well, that all of what we spoke about back then, broken areas in Waterhouse, that the eyesore at least has been glossed over or removed, and that there is real progress being made? Because that's what it comes down to. We in the diaspora talking to our politicians in the neighborhood where we came from and pointing things out that need their attention.
But you don't have a vote.
But we called it out. We
You
have a
don't
forum. We have a forum and we call it out.
Right.
So more and more Jamaicans have to use whatever forum they can appear on to call out specifics in various areas that have been underserved for far too long.
But let me say something more on that, Herb, and to your point, Mike, about vote. We have to change our minds about the concept of voting. Right? We have to look at vote as something more serious than we have looked at it before. Vote is not just an exercise that you do on the day of election. Right? Vote is letting your voice be heard, letting your thoughts be known. Right? That's the beginning. That's the beginning of the thoughts be known. That's the beginning of the coming together. That's the beginning. That's the beginning of the thoughts be known. That's the beginning. Yeah, that's the beginning of the coming together, because this is as much a vote as election day. Right? The election day vote is really just a symbol of support. But the real vote is the dialogue. The real vote is the coming together. That's the vote. So let's change our whole concept about what the vote is. Right? If myself and Mikey and Lass and Herb decide that, listen, we got to do something, that's a vote. Right? And we all come to that common understanding that collectively, we're going to work together. Right? That's the collective vote. Right? Then begin the process of working together.
Well,
so let's
welcome.
change the whole concept about vote.
Last, welcome. This is the problem I'm having with the discussion. You see, my brethren, well, not so a problem I'm having with the discussion. In 1944, the Jamaican people were promised certain things, one of which is the vote and all of that stuff. But over the years, it's like the politicians sort of undermine the vote by deceptive practices and what have you, because in a lot of these communities, do you really think that the people vote genuinely based on what they believe, or based on the influence from the politician?
No. No, they don't. Because again, this is where it come back to not even being honest with yourself. That's what I'm talking about. That's where it come back to not even being honest to yourself. So there's no integrity there. Right? You vote because you can, right? And you say, well, boy, make the politicians work it out. And then when them work it their way, then you complain. Isn't that what happens? That's what happens. But that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay. You want to make it, let's get to your voice now, bro.
Sorry, I wasn't in on most of the discussion. But
yeah, we miss you, man. We miss you.
On the issue of why the people have to fuss and fight against themselves, I think one of the main things we have to focus on is that the people have very little control in that the political system that exists in the country don't give people the level of control and the level of participation and engagement in the political process for them to contribute positively towards the development of their communities and the development of the country as a whole. What I find is happening is that when we look at the political system, even when it comes to the formulation of policies that affect the people right across the country, whether they are GLP or they are PNP. For the most part, the politicians take this upon themselves as the ones who are responsible for formulating policies without any form of consultation in the main part with the constituents who they are leading. Inside the communities, there, for the most part, there's no structure to engage the people to say, what is it you want? What are the main concerns in your community? What do you think will solve the issue of crime? What do you think will solve the issue of employment within the communities? Right? So where there is an absence of participation and an absence of engagement, and certain people believe that it is their responsibilities to formulate things and show it onto the people, right? The people either vote yes or no. What you're going to have is people cussing them one another, say them a dirty labor right, some are cuss, say them a dirty PNP. You understand? Instead of focusing on the real issues that affect the development of their communities. So as long as we continue that kind of politics in Jamaica, we will always be having the fussing and fighting amongst the ordinary people instead of the participation to create real development. That's my initial comment.
Let me throw this, since we're talking about liberal democracy and party politics and what have you. In the current condition, can you genuinely say that there's a difference between the PNP and the JLP? And if so, what are those differences?
In terms of what? Involving the people?
Involving the people, the governance, the democratic process in the society, and all of that. Can you genuinely say that the PNP is different than the JLP? Considering that both of them came out of the 1938 revolt.
For me, if you look at the history of both parties, you have to look at different, you have to wait in terms of the different periods of our development. For example, with the PNP, we saw in the Michael Manley era that because the Michael Manley era was a different area of how the PNP behave and perform than in this present era. Within the Michael Manley era, we saw a greater involvement of the people in the politics of the country. Not because there was just greater interest on the part of the people, but the party itself created certain structures in that time, in the 70s, right? That created greater participation for the youths, greater participation for the communities themselves.
And all of that was rooted in an ideology.
Yes.
Okay.
And, you know, we're talking about just the differences.
Yeah.
Right? And in this time, we can say back then, there was a stark difference between the two parties. I think if we look back, that is the period of time when we could identify a big difference in both parties.
Easily.
Coming to this period, it is very difficult to differentiate the two political parties, both in terms of ideology, as you raised, Mikey, and in terms of actual structures that these two parties want to develop to involve the people in terms of participation. We can remember back then, Mikey, we had things like the youth councils, we had community councils, right? We had various structures inside of the communities where youths could be part of. Whether they are PNP or GLP, they could participate through them youth club, them could participate through them sporting organizations, you could participate through your parent teachers associations and community councils and all those kind of things. What is happening? And those
party affiliation.
Those structures give you a chance when you go to a meeting to say what you feel about how this can affect the community and how this can affect the sporting development in a particular area. All that is absent from the structures, the political structure right now in the community on both sides. Both the GLP, it's absent for the GLP, and it's absent for the PNP. So from that respect, Mikey, you can say there's hardly any difference in terms of the structures that these two parties have or are proposing to give people greater control over the politicians or greater involvement in them communities, right? Economically, there's hardly any difference between the two political parties. There might be certain little administrative differences, right? In what they are proposing. And so it is left to people to say, okay, Andrew Holness is a better man in doing this, or Mark Golden might be better in doing that. So people are left to make choices based on some subjective reasons rather than seeing objective differences, right, for which they have to vote.
Well, last, I don't know what objective difference you're referring to, but I know this much. When it comes to the distribution of power in Jamaica, neither the PNP nor the GLP are different when it comes to that question. The distribution of power in Jamaica.
Well, what do you mean when you say that?
What I mean is giving folks at the community level to engage in practice, some of those practice which last touch on, giving them power. I remember a discussion in the 70s around the community council. Remember the community council? In the 70s, that was a big thing for the PNP, Michael Manley, Paul Burke, and all of those stuff. When it got to the point where they have to start write law and implement this now, Ripton McPherson, who was the Speaker of the House then, refused for that matter to come up in the Parliament. Refused. And his main point was the politician. They don't want that. You see, it's easy, we complain and what have you. And the sad thing about it is the fussing and fighting is going on amongst the black people. Powerless black people in Jamaica.
But Mike, if I can get a shot at your question, right? And that you posed to Las. And in many ways I agree with Las. And just to say further, that when we look at the PNP and the GLP, right? The PNP as we know it, right, and the GLP as we know it, because that's basically what we're looking at when we really try to answer that question, right? There's one fundamental difference we know with the PNP and the GLP going back many years, going back to its inception, in fact, right? And that is that the PNP tends to attract, people across class lines, right? Whereas the GLP primarily and objectively attract members of the upper class, right? So that is one fundamental difference, I would say, with both. When it comes to support and issues, yes, there might be some, ding-dong situation in that. Because you have people who vote against their own interest too, their own class interest. Let's put it that way, right? But at the same time, what happens is that the PNP has been known to offer more prospects for any imagined change. And I'm careful about how I say that. More prospects for any imagined change. In other words, the PNP has always promoted themselves as a party of change, right? That is not so with the GLP. So that's two fundamental differences I can say with both parties, right? Anything else is like, you gotta tread carefully in terms of how you look at, breaking them down. But those are two fundamental differences, I would say, which kind of maintain to this day.
But Herb, what do you think?
Okay, what was the question again? Repeat for me.
The difference. Is there a fundamental difference between the GLP and the PNP in light of what we talk about, the violence and all of that stuff? Because part of the violence comes out of the political process that the Jamaican people adopt.
Yeah,
So
look, we know that the GLP and the upper echelon in Jamaica, namely the private sector organizations, they work hand in hand because they have remained very quiet over these 8 years about the afflictions against the Jamaican people, right? And we know that the PNP normally works on our social issues more than any other time in history than the GLP ever has. So it's just like here in the US, where the rich get richer because they get the tax breaks, and the poor get poorer, unless the Democrats are in, and the Democrats can then direct more funding, contracts, and stuff through the hands of minorities and others that can feed into communities. It's a similar situation. So unless we can get um, both parties concentrating bottom-up programs, we see, where did the contracts go in education? It went to an associate of the Prime Minister when he was Minister of Education, and it's still going to that associate to this day. No matter which companies they form, these companies are the same ones that feed at the government trough. We see Trump breaking that up here in the US because he wants his people to feed, right? And you see the big brouhaha with him and the Tesla gentleman, right? Now that it's been broken up, a lot of things have come out. So we need, I go back to when I called for the similar commission like what South Africa had, which is a commission to clear up all of these different scandals and all of these murders and all of these various things that have happened in Jamaica, and assign fault where fault belongs. Just clear it up once and for all. Use a commission, a truth commission,
You think we're going? You think we're going to get that without the application of force? Demanding it.
The diaspora has to play a role in that, right? We have to speak with one voice.
The Truth and Reconciliation Committee.
The Truth Commission Committee.
Yeah.
It can happen. You know, it can happen. And unless we are committed to that, I don't see it happening. I see what happens in Jamaica is like a round robin. When I run out, you run in. You know, you skim some off the top, I skim some off the bottom. Right? This continues indefinitely. But we have to have a long-term program to fix all of this stuff. And we have to have a program committed to removing corrupt politicians, regardless of whoever they are, from the system in Jamaica. And now is the best time possible, because if JCF have the software that can track and trace, it means they can track and trace funds. They know who have illicit gains. I mean, the IC Commission told them. So what is it going to take for FID and MOCA and the rest of them to do their jobs? They need to be moved from probably out from under JLP and PNP and probably come under the Governor General and let him direct them. Hey,
I wouldn't support that.
You would support it?
I would not support the Governor General.
Let me take a shot at that, Mike. Right? You know, some come to mind as you ask Herb that question there. I remember our good brother, I can't remember his name now, back, was he must have guessed on the show here too. But he was on Rattigan's program and he raised the word point about critical mass.
Yeah.
You know. And of course it was a well misunderstood point. But I understand where he was coming from. But at the time, it seemed like a very misunderstood point. But here I would put it. The changes that we look for to happen, right? Like, for example, directly to your question, right? If it has to come through force. Force is not how it comes. How it comes is when the people are ready for it. When the people are truly ready for it, it's going to happen. That's really what it means. Because what happens is that if we really engage in the process, and as I said, be honest with ourselves, right? So that we can be honest with others. Because if we're not honest with ourselves, we can't be honest with others, right?
True.
Then we start working together. Then what is going to happen is that you're going to have a government, right, who is going to make the laws, enshrine the laws, right, the kind of laws which really stem that whole corrupt approach. Because if you come with the corrupt approach, if you come with the Trump style or the what you call it, the oldness style, right? It is plain and simple honesty. And the laws are straightforward and you can prosecute those laws. Right? Like I said,
you heard what he said?
Don't do is make laws for themselves.
But you heard what he said last week, that he doesn't need outside force with the accountability. It's the accountability is from the PMP, the JLP members, his members. You know,
but accountability, right? Is what you would have to offer up to the judicial system. That's really what the accountability really means. Offer it up. If you have a way for accounting for your illicit enrichment, right? Offer it up. The problem is that he has no accountability.
you're my problem with the political system, Patrick. We're talking about the GLP shifting to in a direction of being authoritarian and discriminatory and all kind of things. But this is a criticism of the entire political process in the country over the years. What I see happening, or what has been happening, is that the political system that we have built in this country, well, in Jamaica, is by its nature. Huh?
By its nature, it's a conflict.
Yes, it is a separate and apart system of existence. Inside the communities, you have GLP organizations, you have PNP organizations. When the PNP win, freedom organizations is the dominant force in any community under the PNP government. Do you believe when the GLP in power, it got change? And when the PNP come back, that system got change? No, that is the system we build. We build a system where the PNP group in a Waterhouse are the force in the community to deal with. The GLP group in a Duane Park and Patrick City and those places are the force where you have to deal with. What these politicians fail to build is democratic organizations that involve the entire constituency and the entire community. The PNP will complain now of the GLP shutting them out, but when the PNP in power, the GLP are going to complain about the same thing if them don't change their mindset, because the political system that we have is one that is partisan from top to bottom. And if you have a partisan system existing at the grassroots level, and you have a partisan system where exists at the parliamentary level, you're going to get the system seem authoritarian, because when them in a power, they're going to shut out everybody else. It's nothing new. It's nothing specific to the GLP. It is the system we build in the country, and that is what I'm saying we need to change. Because what I do, when the GLP in power, it gives a certain little, not a lot of participation, but a little bit of participation to the GLP people, right? And a little bit more access to the scarce benefits to the GLP people. But when the pendulum switch, is the same thing go on when the PNP in power. What we need to have, yeah, it's the same system. The system not change. What we need to have, and is those organizations in the community, and the politicians have to be part of building these organizations, these broad-based community or constituency organization where GLP and PNP can participate and argue as community people together and find solutions, right? And make recommendations through these organizations together. It can be when the PNP in, you have a constituency of PNP people where the parliamentarian listen to. And when the GLP win, you have a constituency. Because when these politicians, when them tell us that them have a constituency committee,
it's just
a lot of these politicians love to tell you, oh, I am accountable because I have a parliamentary committee or a parliamentary whatever existing in my constituency. What him exactly saying is that him have a pack of PNP people or a pack of labor right people who him listen to. It's not a broad-based organization we cut across the board. Because there's a tendency in Jamaica, if you think Jamaica is divided between PNP and GLP. Warm to the Christian, warm to the Rastaman, warm to the youth that is neither GLP or PNP. Where is his voice? And until we can create these organizations in our communities, we can't talk about accountability and transparency, because a PNP man accountable to some PNP people, or a GLP man accountable to some labor right people. That are not accountability, that are not transparency. So in the absence of those things, it only leaves the people to fight amongst themselves. And it never go change.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Just to add one piece to what you just said, last, is that with everything what you just said, what makes that happen is when you enshrine that into the law. Because that's why they are lawmakers. Right? Because the laws are supposed to be there for our guidance. Right? To keep us on track as to where we're going. But what kind of laws we have? We have laws which give guarantees to the top echelon of society. Right? It punishes, by and large, those at the bottom. Right? And it brings no benefit. It brings marginal benefits to them if necessary. If necessary. Right? But it doesn't really protect them. The laws don't do that. What last just outlined, or you bring that about, is enshrine it in law. Right?
But that is why, Patrick, you see the constitutional reform process,
fundamental.
It is fundamental. But you see, what is it that these politicians want to change in the constitution? Them don't want to change the things that limit them power and limit them control, or give any more power to the community people over them. I mean, not talk about just the GLP, because it's not just the GLP, because some of the fundamental changes were needed in the constitution to give power to the communities and to people. None of them no really want to touch it that much. They want just change up those little things that them tell you, say, about the king and the this and the that. And those are not the important things to make the people feel and have control over them. They don't want to change those things. You understand? And those are the things we need to be changed. Right? If these people... Yeah, Patrick.
Here's what I want to say to that. What come to mind as you said that. And this one didn't burn me because I really want to say it. Last week we had our good brother Lamy, right, on the program, right? And Lamy made a real bold statement in a humble way. Right? He said, don't look at him as a senator. Right? Look at him as Lamy. And really, it stand out for me because that's who I know. I know a Lamy going back, 30 odd, 40 odd years, right? And when you really think about it, right? The Lamy way I know is, if you was to ask me, I would classify him as a revolutionary trade unionist. Right? But Lamy speaks with such a voice that you don't hear nobody in whether the lower house or the upper house, right, of the parliament speak like how he speaks. Because him speak from a place of integrity when him consistently, right, hold that position. So I say all of that to say that it's gonna take people like Lamy, right, in the PNP, right, to grow the movement in such a way that it makes that shift to produce the kinds of politicians that are really needed.
What about the JLP?
The same thing applies to the JLP. The same thing applies to the JLP.
Well, who within the JLP you see as promising enough right now that would move in that direction?
I
I
don't see
think
nobody really.
Nobody I
The
can think of.
JLP, the JLP for me coming like what's happening in the Republican Party, where
Maybe,
everybody say what Trump say.
yeah, maybe
And
I
right
don't know
now in
it
the
well enough, but
GLP,
yeah,
everybody
I
is
don't
saying
know that
what
well
Andrew
enough.
said, or even if they
Everybody
don't believe,
in
even if
lockstep
they
with Andrew. Yeah.
even if they don't believe in what Andrew is saying, when him say them say them believe it. It's so
I
I
disagree.
can't say,
I disagree. I think Tufton.
come on.
Oh, come on, Mike. Tufton is number 2 on the list of $3 trillion that's unaccounted for in Jamaica. Number 1 is the education, right? And they're about 900 billion, right? They didn't combine that with the Prime Minister's office because it was a separate case. But he has a hand in the education money that's missing or unaccounted for. But Tufton is over 800 billion. And Tufton can't make excuses no more because a simple improvement to Cornwall Regional at 2 billion, 2.2 billion is now up to 24 billion. I personally feel, well, some of that money might be monies they're going to use come election day. But the bottom line is you milk that hospital for all it's worth, and you still cannot give the people of Western Jamaica a decent hospital that they can go to and feel comfortable lying down in. There's no place for the people. You see people sit on chairs and sleep on floors. Savannah Hospital at one point, the woman told us she had to use 2 truck tires and put a piece of plyboard on top of the tires so she could lay down. I mean, if you have to bring your own pillow case,
When you put the transparency concern in the contracts at Cornwall Regional, that make it even
yeah,
that
and
rule out
then all the dead bodies that pile up, Tufton and his funeral home getting first
So
dibs.
so you're saying there's no
They might,
there's no possibility of folks going into the JLP and reform the JLP.
I'm not saying
there is
that, Mikey, but you're saying
no,
there at this time we don't see nobody who are show any signs that them willing to create any kind of democratic change inside of the party.
and that's why you want young people.
Maybe them not doing it inside, maybe them doing it outside.
Well,
That's a possibility.
Yeah,
That's
but
a,
when you're on the outside,
I'm not saying
looking
that is so. I'm just saying maybe.
if you're on the outside looking in, Patrick, that you're ineffective. Just that's what's happening to the diaspora. We're on
Yeah.
the outside looking in, and they're gonna take our money every year, our 3 billion, 3.5 billion. They take it every single year. And when we
But
raise our voices, they say, "Oh, be quiet. You have no
but,
stand."
but
but
that could be
here's a piece
that
to
could be because of the lack of organization, as what Lass is arguing. The
not
lack of
lack of
organization.
organization, lack of integrity and honesty.
Yeah,
Lack of integrity and honesty. Because
because that is
again,
what is holding
this
us
is
back.
this is directly where it goes to. Because remember, like I said before, right at the start, that's the fundamental reason why we don't work together. Right?
Organization.
Because we can't bear to listen to people who don't share our view or share our position right? Because we feel like our position has to be the dominant one, and we're not even clear in our own minds that the position we hold is whether it's a position of honesty and integrity, or it's just one of selfishness.
And that affect politicians of the right and of the left, right?
Yes, it affects everybody.
You
And
know,
that's why I raise Lammy as well. Right? Because like I said, you don't hear politicians speak like how he speaks. You don't hear that.
Integrity, you know.
You don't hear that. None at all.
Well, yeah, some people are saying that you can create a business outside, I guess here in the diaspora, make enough money to go to Jamaica and spend your profits down in Jamaica trying to improve things. Well, that would be a non-profit organization doing that kind of stuff.
But that don't offer you no guarantees either.
That's true. And all non-profit organizations just got their legs taken out if they had USAID contracts, because that's no more.
Right. But the thing, no, but hold on there, because this is where I definitely disagree with you, and I've made this known over and over and over again. It's funny, the situation came up even just this past week. USAID is not aid. It is an it really is about, it really means Agency for International Development. Who's international development? The US. It is not about aid to anyone. And that's one of the things where the Africans push back on. Because they say all the years of all of these aid, show us the development. Show us how it has brought us any development.
Well, think about AIDS and HIV. Think about other dangerous.
Listen. It's more of an experiment than anything else, right? They use it as an experiment because they don't experiment on their own before they try to experiment on others, right? And that is primarily how they use it, right? It's a bait and switch.
Gentlemen, I want to draw your attention to what I post here. Okay. Anyone want to respond?
I said it.
Anyone want to respond to this? What from Miss Curiosity Kid?
The only thing I'd say, and Earl is on the program, and he will tell you when I speak here in the US and I speak when I'm in Jamaica.
Well, he can say what he wanna say because obviously he knows none of us. He knows none of us here. But every single person you see on this panel has had some experience working in Jamaica. We are Jamaicans to begin with, right?
Yeah.
That's where our life began. Our work started not when we came to the US, right? We're only on this panel now because, the situation and circumstance affords us to be on this panel, right? But before we're on this panel, we were doing work. Our concern for Jamaica is no less than it was when we were there. So it's only because you have no idea who you're talking about.
Last, I think this comment here point to your integrity issue. And
No, I'm not going to respond. I think Patrick response is enough. And directly address that.
What exactly?
No, Patrick said, put it straight. This is not our work. This is not the only participation in the development of trying to find Jamaica or create development for Jamaica. This is not our only work. there's a history behind it, but what Patrick says is enough. There's nothing I can say that would probably change this person's mind if they don't know. So what Patrick says is enough.
But this Miss Curiosity kid is saying, I was shocked to discover that Rattigan was not in.
Oh, Rattigan? Well, we can't comment on that. We don't know why. We don't know. We don't know why Rattigan wasn't there. We can't answer for him. We're not going to criticize him for not what we don't know about. But that's not part of our job.
Okay.
I mean,
that's an issue to take up with Rattigan.
Yeah, take up that with Rattigan. I mean, we're not going to join or get nobody prompt us to criticize another member of this movement. Rattigan is part of the movement, just like anyone else.
From my understanding of the program as well, is that it's a program that was taking place on here as well as physically there at the center in Jamaica. So,
Yeah.
It's not about him being there or being on here.
Sometimes people try to prompt to create more division than there is. So you have to be careful.
Well, gentlemen, it is clear that the lack of organization among our people result in just fight. The absence of organization, in amidst that, it will lead us to just fight amongst each other and allow the politicians them to divide and rule us. This liberal democracy thing really now works for majority people, especially Caribbean Jamaicans.
One of the things we have to stress to Mikey, we can blame the politicians for not promoting the kind of participation where we believe in, but we have to also blame the people them too, because you have a situation in Jamaica where the people just not making any demands on them politicians. The people, a lot of people in the communities just believe that they must swallow or drink whatever the politicians give them for drink to make them believe in them more. The situation have to change where we find that people make demands when them making them vote, or when them election, even outside the election, make demands to the councillors. Tell the councillors what you want to see, even if the structures don't exist inside of the community. Go to them, the people have to go to them and tell them, say, this is what me want to see, And when them make proposals, people have to say, yes, me agree with that, or me feel like, say, you need to modify it this way or that way to make it more beneficial to us.
And I think that they are doing that, It's just that the politician not listening.
Not enough, Mikey.
Not listening.
Not enough. Too much of the people, them go rise up and wave flag when election time come round. Too many of our people like that. Right? When it's not election season, they are silent, dormant. Them not have no say. Them not anything go by them.
That's true.
Right? That's true. Until okay, election might be September, July and August. You hear them start. Right? The people have to be more conscious and more demanding on them politicians in order to create change. Because it's one thing to talk and grumble about the changes and what the politicians not doing. Mark Golden not doing this and Holness not doing this and whatever. But they're not going to do it if them feel like, say, whatever them throw out there, the people just go and swallow it. And that's for the main part what's happening. The people
Well-
them not resisting and making demands.
Well, the news are reporting that the PNP is likely to win the next election. They are leading the GLP by 4 to 9 points. That's one thing. On the other hand, it seems like there's a slip in the support for Golden, and Holness is, sort of recovering grounds. So, what are you reading on this? Are we looking forward to a PNP government, or more need to be done?
There's always
I-
more needed to be done, and hopefully, right, we're talking about a definite change of government.
Well, according to Lamy, it is for the PNP to lose. They have to put in the work,
Right.
and
That's what I fully agree. There's always more to be done. Right? There's nothing to be complacent about. A complacent win is not a win.
I think the PNP need to put in a whole heap more work, because it's one thing to just say that based on the sentiments amongst the people, it look a certain way, but it is another thing, for have the organization in place and doing the work to really change the minds of the people conclusively.
I will never forget 1980, Montego Bay,
Exactly.
when the PNP declared, Michael Manley declared, 150,000 can't be wrong.
Exactly. So sometimes sentiment might say one thing, because look at the local government elections.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing,
Yeah.
In the local government election, the PNP felt confident that I'm going to turn the table convincingly. Right? And we have to look at the thing. Are the Jamaican people convinced that them have to get rid of Andrew Holness? For me, it's not conclusive that way.
Yeah.
And because it not a lot of things change in the last couple of months, Remember last year and the year before, we say, boy, the government have to deal with any party go create a change in the election, have to do something about the violence. That was one of the things we were saying last year and the year before. The GLP has done that. We can't shut our eye to that, Bridget.
No.
Not to the registered non-voters.
And it is significant, because a lot of Jamaicans, both in the diaspora and at home, that have a very big impact on them. Up to today, I was talking to one Jamaican here, right? On the phone. And the position was that, boy, things are look better, look good now. Like say we can, maneuver in Jamaica much more. And them giving the government credit for it. So what it means, the fact that the GLP has made a dent on crime, it will create a greater challenge for the PNP to do more work, because we can't be sure how much that is going to impact people's impression of the government. Because so far as I see, the whole argument around corruption has not been cutting it in terms of, driving people away substantially from the government.
No, it's not cutting it.
Because
they have made a very good argument. They just point to Holness rather than into the structure and what have you.
I'd love to see the PNP, step it up.
And they are doing that.
They are
doing that.
So,
Seems like every Sunday they have some activities, conference. They are doing that.
and
But I think the bigger problem them face is Golden. As some folks at White House tell me that, listen, we want to support him, we want to fight and everything, but he's not a fighter. We need a fighter. And that is what the PNP is missing.
I don't know, because
what is the fight that they're not seeing?
Because I see out there, I see Golden out there, him on most of the issues. He's on most of the issues.
But he's not aggressive.
So I don't know what is it directly them saying when him said, whoever said he want to fight.
It was Golden who wrote the rules for the Integrity Commission. So it's Golden who pushed the whole thing. And it is the current Prime Minister who's trying to undermine it by not making a declaration for 4 years, and by trying to remove now the lady from the Auditor General woman. He's trying to take her off of the committee. And to me, she's the one who knows where the bodies are buried. She's the one who knows where money is missing throughout government. So why would you want to take somebody with that knowledge off the Integrity Commission, right? When the entire design is to discover who in government is stealing funds from the people of Jamaica.
But how do you get to make that determination when you're already the subject of investigation?
You don't, but as a politician, he has a voice. That's the problem. His own party won't shut him up. So somebody else needs to bring the facts out and lay it bare, right? And shut him up. But
yeah,
see,
absolutely.
If we won't let people do that because the rules that they have made up for the Integrity Commission is that they can't discuss these cases. They have to table it in Parliament, and Parliament have to say who is doing what. And then you're not going to get the facts because the person that controls the facts is the Speaker of the House, who happens to be a holiness. All right? We have to push past that and have the private sector now say, hey, this is bad for Jamaica. Makes us look like we are some kind of banana republic. And we can't afford to have that image of Jamaica portrayed across the whole world. But not even that is going to happen because the private sector is themselves vote GLP and they take a full advantage of the breaks that the Prime Minister has given them, whether or not they earned it or not. You know?
Of course they do, because they are the main benefactors of a GLP government.
Yep. So we need balance in the system. We have to have some kind of balance. And the only way you can do that, they used to have the ombudsman. And the ombudsman was to take care of the voting issues with polling and registration and all that stuff.
Well, gentlemen, I have no confidence in neither the GLP nor the PMP will bring fundamental change to Jamaica. No. What I see happening is just like Democratic Party up here. The lawyers, them control it. In the same thing with the People's National Party. Lawyers control it and everything. Press release. What we need right now, we need boots on the ground and organize the people, because that is what is lacking amongst the Jamaican people and the young people. Organization. And we're not
we want to make something clear though, Mikey.
Huh?
We have to make something clear though. While we talk about parties to bring fundamental change, we have to also recognize that sometimes we have to take what we can get at a particular time that is better, and
wait for the next turn.
Than wait and just the fundamental change. We can talk and all we want about the fundamental change, because that is the meaningful change we want. But at the same time, we have to say what is the best option also at this time. Even if we now go achieve fundamental change now, we have to recognize and promote the best option for the people at the particular time that we are at.
So
Okay.
even if
And
you have to
the
creep
best
before a run.
option, yes, you know. So
Patrick,
I say even if we have to creep before a run.
yeah. Last, you
so
finish?
so the PNP, why we have to defend the PNP right now is that them are the better option, right, for the country right now. Even though we say that in general the two parties are substantially different, and then bring fundamental change, them are the best option. And the best option sometimes open more opportunities to create greater change.
Yes.
And that is what we have to promote at this time.
Brothers, it's since 1944 we've been dealing with these parties, and
Yeah.
I don't see any change coming by way of them. The same thing. They're just in a fight as to who can manage this capitalist economy better. This one cost that one cost that one. And while they cost and fight, the people suffer.
But here's something that is often forgotten, Mike, right? Based on you making that statement. One of the things again that is often forgotten is that really when you look at the whole situation, going back to the 1944 period and so on, right? A lot of times we were really, talking above people's heads because there wasn't that level of development for people even to understand. People never understand what a working class is because we had no developed working class, right? People never understand what it was for for struggling for change and really standing up and resisting oppression and all of that, right? It was something that we were entering into a learning phase about, right? And that is still so by and large today, right? It is not that much different. That's one of the reasons why the trade union movement emerged, right? And where's the trade union movement today? In many ways, it has been quashed. So this is something we often forget when we look at the situation. Those of us who are more, intellectually in tune with the periods and what what evolves, right? So we gotta be careful. We don't run ahead of the people and a lot of these things and simply say it is their responsibility and so on. This is where we gotta step up and show ourselves in terms of helping people understand really what we're talking about.
Gentlemen,
I want to say one thing, Mike, before you. I see here where folks talking about traveling to Jamaica and can't travel because they're ill or they have an ongoing medical issue that they treat here in the United States. You mentioned Tufton a while back. with all the money Tufton been spending, you can't name a public medical facility that have the basics of MRI, CAT scan, and other sophisticated blood testing. That is,
Why can't you?
all right, KPH. They have it.
Not I'm aware of.
UWI,
I would assume that they would have it.
they don't have it. UWI don't have it. The private section that UWI has. People can't go home if they're sick. There's people that need dialysis and they don't trust the system in Jamaica. Right? I heard the doctor guy that was talking about the stuff that was transferred to Jamaica, and people at UWI practicing medicine in specialties that they're not certified for. It was on Andre's program. Can you imagine a man doing neurosurgery and him have no fellowship that he did in neurosurgery at any hospital? Didn't even finish his residency training, but him doing operations on people's spine.
But that is as a direct result of what I talked about earlier, Herb, in terms of the integrity in education.
You know, you cannot trust the system when you have a man who's not a medical doctor running the whole damn healthcare program. He may have a business.
Hold up. So you're saying that you cannot treat cancer without first having cancer?
No.
I'm not saying
No.
that. I'm saying that you need the basics to be able to diagnose and give prognosis on various diseases. And that when people come to Jamaica with confirmed diseases like kidney failure, end stage, or cancers, or what have you, they want to know that the facilities are there to facilitate treatment. Because they didn't come to Jamaica to get killed. The hospitals to take them out. Right? Now,
So basically, you know, what you're saying, Herb, right, and to answer your question, Mike, is that there has to be, when a person is in a particular practice, right, it has to be backed by the necessary study, right? The necessary study and deep understanding and development on the subject. And not just there to fill a void.
you know what? I think, Mike, it would be great if we can reach out to that particular doctor, bring him on our program as a Diaspora.
You have a number for him?
I'm gonna reach out to somebody to get it.
Yeah, if you can reach out to him, that would be good.
I
Gentlemen,
it's a big key. It's a big key because it impacts our tourism big time.
okay.
And they hear all these people dying from simple things that doctors should do.
Okay.
It's
Gentlemen, we are now at that stage, you know, and I want to go around in terms of final remarks. Starting
not Dr.
Herb,
Hunter.
there's
Yeah,
some
I see Miss Curious, the kid, call his name, Dr. Hunter, yeah. If you have a contact number for him, you should put it out in the program. But I know somebody who can contact him. But this man was an instructor at UWI. And the man go around the world and treat patients in America, in UK,
and what happened?
and Canada. Him come back to Jamaica and the UWI chancellor remove him as an instructor at UWI because of politics, an agreement between him and Holness. Right? See, this is the kind of we call chicken shit stuff that they do that needs to be removed from the system. When you have intelligent people who have all the degrees and the various training that they need to have, you can't have them at the BS of a academic intellectual removing the man without cause. And don't kill off nobody, but him talk about those people who are unqualified in the system in Jamaica, killing people off. And that needs to come out. You can't have people going down there thinking, oh man, I can go get treatment here because they advertise it, only to find out that them have no qualifications at all in the specialty that they advertise. You can't do that here in America. If somebody's not board certified in certain skill sets, and I'm sure in Canada as well, lass.
Okay.
Treating people, talking about you're an expert.
Okay. Let us hear from Patrick now, no?
Yeah. Even though we never got to speak on another subject which you mentioned at the beginning of the program, the situation with Iran and Israel.
Yeah.
Because it is a situation that is as of much importance to us as is any other situation. And just for us to keep an eye on that and at some point really have a more thorough discussion about it. But given what we discussed today, I'm even more resolute that, what this really calls for is for us to really, each and every person to really look themselves in the mirror and say, what is my responsibility, in all of this, right? Begin there, right? Because it's not just a matter of we swelling more people on the airwaves listening to us every Sunday and so on, but also about us understanding that the only way we're going to make meaningful change is by moving in the direction of working together, right? And we're not looking for saviors. We can't look for saviors because there are no saviors. The only saviors are us, right? Don't fall for the okey doke. There are no saviors coming to save you, right? We are our only saviors. And it begins with us working together, right? And we have to lift that level of consciousness to realize that.
Last, your final remarks.
I just want to end with that issue of whoever saying that Mark Golding is not a fighter. Just to highlight the point that in the political process, people sometimes can stay one side and criticize the leaders, but there's a duty of voters to make their voices heard in terms of, saying what they want, so that leaders can help leaders to create the change that they want. What I'm saying is that it's not enough just to criticize the leaders, but to contribute our thoughts and whatever we can do to create the change. Jamaica at this time needs change, and we need to all participate.
And on that note, I want to thank each and every one of you for today's discussion. I also want to say thank you to the many listeners and ask them to like and subscribe this channel. You know, we getting there, but our goal is to have 10,000 subscribers. So please like and share this broadcast. And again, thank you very much for taking part in today's discussion. What good. Until we
Well,
meet
good
again.
everybody.
Blessings, everybody.
All right.
Stay safe, stay well during the week. You cut Mike?
Yeah.
Still on. We're still live. Yeah, say I get your message. You still on?